First theory on the meaning of life. I express these thoughts with a bit of nervousness, as though I feel the inner coding for the megascript we call life is not meant to be discussed openly. But this is simply the theory of one human, so it must mean little in the long run, unless its truth value is very high. This referring to the level guide from the book Power vs. Force. The main focus of the videos on my channel is establishing objective reality sans the cultural, emotional manipulation so common in media. I use musical themes and imagery, not to deceive, but to carefully guide the viewer into the deep realms of my perspective. With that said, let's begin. Growing up, I used to watch a Nickelodeon show called Are You Afraid of the Dark? One episode had the startling plot of a family moving into a new home. Unbeknownst to them, there was a mad scientist who drained life force of the previous inhabitants using mirrors. The episode featured sophisticated appearing props of life force tubes that drained as the story progressed, symbolizing a process of rapid aging, this shown by the characters appearing to age with each drop of life force level. The mad scientist would appear in a chamber, absorbing the life force from the characters who stayed at this house. This particular episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark had a strong impact on me as an impressionable young mind at the time. As I stayed with an adoptive grandmother in her 80s who appeared old, the limitation of life in terms of a set number of years and its symbolic quantification as a life force tube really set off my imagination of looking at life from the perspective of the most entertainment dominant media of our age, those being video games. Now, I divide general public opinion of the perception of the meaning of life into two categories: meaning-packed personal narrative versus series of accidental events. The popular liberal arts education paradigm of our age is that life evolved on Earth as a series of coincidental occurrences that, through the laws of probability, resulted in a realm teeming with a diversity of life forms. Morality and virtue only hold as much weight as it is possible to improve the survivability of a given species. The occurrence of apparent emotions in animals only playing the role as a socializing survival mechanism to promote species fitness. In this paradigm, religious thought in some creatures exists as it is an adaptive mechanism to help the organism cope with the inevitability of death. If you travel the life course of liberal education, you are considered an intellectual elite and a success of the Western liberal arts system if you hold these beliefs. In stark opposition, general religious thought holds that human life is lived for a purpose, on account of some surveilling superhuman force that exists outside the constraints of our limited vision, in a world of matter and energy. From this starting theme, a diversity of spiritual traditions exist that characterize the surveilling superpresence as anthropomorphized deities or spiritual animals, the earth itself, or even the generic term force or presences. These characterizations of their surveilling presence are then imbued with the full spectrum of human behavior and personalities, often in seemingly exaggerated examples. These overdone examples, the aloof but philosophical crafty Hades character, the others focused character of Jesus, also function in what we have termed archetypes. The archetype is the perfected demonstration of specific pattern of human behavior. These are characters consistently showing the quintessence, or most supreme prime showing, of a pattern of behavior for a given living being. In my years of reflection, I found the dichotomy of people between those who hold life has some form of supernatural meaning to those who hold that life's events are statistical and purely mechanical as the most important dichotomy of all existential thought. The way the clock of civilization has been turning, people neatly divide themselves into smaller and smaller subcategories within each of these two major divisions. My deepest desire seems to be perfect objective understanding of what human life on Earth is, specifically if there is a supernatural in part, or if it is purely mechanical and statistical series of actions-reactions. So over the years, I struggled, strongly vacillating between degrees of acceptance of both these existential paradigms. My Western education framework consistently reflects biological evolution via natural selection. If you look at the things that befall people, in frustration you may quip, okay, this woman took care of a mentally disabled child for 20 years, then was divorced by spouse because age and stress stole her good looks. Then her jealous mother died but refused to leave her an inheritance. Then she finds she has cancer everywhere in her body and has to figure out who is going to take care of the disabled child and close her affairs in the 4 months she is expected left to live. No supernatural surveilling presence would seem to allow this to happen to such a good person. Therefore, life is random, and it's survival of the fittest. So that is one perspective. Then I have numerous borderline events in life of very unexplained experiences in order: seeing a classic UFO at the age of 9 while emptying the trash one night, legitimizing reverse speech phenomena experimentally on a few occasions, capturing footage of a ghost with EVP, cataloging synchronous occurrences of events that teach the meanings of a new word or concepts, including one occasion where months prior I read an old book, Power versus Force, and then met a person claimed to be on his deathbed who waved his hand and told me my level within just 3 minutes of meeting him. On another occasion, seeing a solar eclipse and capturing the apparent plasma during the video capture of said event. This list is not exhaustive. All of these borderline events could possibly be written off as a coincidence of faulty perception and camera hiccups in our Western liberal education paradigm. The unexplained experiences often do not leave you with a tangible thread that you can turn into a science, as they usually are not reproducible. I can manipulate the size of my hands with thought, and can alter the decay of raw rice through the quality of words in a manner that is reproducible. But find these exploits always fail to garner the attention they deserve in this age of Chris Angel and other skilled illusionists who commit apparent miracles, but state their works are mundane tricks of perception. Because I have these apparent special experiences, I am prevented from going all in on the classical liberal education paradigm explanation of our reality. While I consider myself to be obsessed with logic, flowcharts, and algorithms, I know the sum total of my otherworldly experience cannot be written off as chance or faulty human perception. And to provide me with significant help in not writing off those experiences, I was privileged to do a massive deep dive on the majority of the topics the YouTube algos won't deem appropriate, so I'll have to use guarded words to describe. Let's just say I started with a film called Road to Tyranny, progressed to the depths of Fritz Springmeier's work, touched on Judy Wood's book, dabbled a little bit in Jonathan Sather's universe, met up with the Black Pope in Rome, danced with the blank Princess Rihanna, of course borrowing a line from Do What Thou Wilt by Jay-Z, before finally stumbling upon a pamphlet by a particle colliding company which showed both the phrase "mirror, mirror on the wall, clown realm" and "What did I say to Luke in that blockbuster?" and "The White Rabbit," all before validating a secret account system when I played the Powerball. That is, I paid my power bill. In yet another experience, I had the perception of Earth's appearance having to be reassessed before the big realization. Well, one of two big realizations, actually. The first was an experiential solidification of an understanding of the concept of the battle between good and evil. The liberal Western education paradigm is playing the villainous role, while a portion of the spirit-focused New Age miracles possible paradigm is the hero role. From here, it's just play word associations. Videos are needed to address the numerous examples showing this is in fact the correct dichotomy. I posit that it is becoming progressively easier to find examples confirming this dichotomy of Western scientific framework, evil, spiritual woo-woo, good. I speculate if the Mandela effect, which I traced as a time range of change between approximately the year 2000 and 2012, may be at the root of what made perceiving this dichotomy easier. As if it was a cheat code that made the game of life easier to play for the masses. I mean, things have really started to become plain as day starting from 2015 and onwards. To understand what I'm talking about takes a certain way of thinking. Of course, this way of thinking is associative and very discouraged in classical liberal education. You might call this the intuitive way of seeing things. I'll present this way Socratically with questions. It is totally understandable that high-risk, edgy content sells well in music videos, but doesn't it seem that the symbols seen, for example, Lady Gaga's Madonna, seem a little too standardized and overly produced? Doesn't the edge factor vanish if these spooky signs and symbols are overused? Yet they appear and seem to worsen year after year, from the hard rock 70s era of Rolling Stones and Black Sabbath to the present day. Wow. It's quite interesting that all of these suppressed, exposing secrets are released on these famous politicians, yet it never gets publicity in the media. How is it that inquisitions on sitting presidents are shown to have no basis in fact after $40 million investigations get all the spotlight instead? Quite fascinating that deep introspective topics never get adequate distribution in the largest public video hosting platforms on Earth, whereas Fortnight, cute pets, and singing celebrities develop systemically promoted fortunes and exposure, completely drowning out conversation on existential topics. Why is it that Crowder was de-blanketized even though he did not violate terms of service? Looks like The Late Show and mainstream news networks have the highest P-, scores, even though their content is not as popular as others with lower P-, scores. Why is it that the most popular channels are the least controversial and the most on board with the status quo? There is a deep division here. You probably heard, the truth exists if you have eyes that can see. I can communicate the truth to you in plain language, but that communication matters not if you are in an analytical frame of mind that constantly tries to create arguments that delegitimize perspectives that make you feel uncomfortable. You can carry out an array of logical fallacies, a defense mechanism for reasons not entirely clear, but implicating the following: non-player character theories, Stockholm Syndrome, spiritual possession, spiritual level theory, that is, the Age of Souls, astrological theory, personality type theory, and simple arrogance, narcissism. Without getting too political, from the context of what I've seen as a citizen of the US, and taking a bird's eye view, it is quite clear that at least since the early 20th century, there has been a progression of events that reveal a villainous and heroic dichotomy. The common language for the progression would be the Club of Rome Accords or Agenda 21 or the secular commandments scribed on a stone in Elberton, Georgia. Don't think I can use the correct name here on this platform. This, of course, would be on the side of villainy. The goal, in its most distilled sense, is pure nihilism. Whereas Western scientific development has used capitalism to improve civilization gradually, there exists a menace within its paradigm that seeks to break down human beings, remove their dignity, and steal their hope for a prosperous future. This is like the Borg virus in the Matrix program that produces a bunch of Agent Smiths. They are using the instrumentation of science through marketing to shift the Overton window of human expectations to a disempowering frame. I do not believe lowering the population is a true end goal. It appears to be adjustment of beliefs and expectations of outcomes. That brings me to my second big realization and inspiration of this video. You now at least have a clue to my background experience. On the date this script was produced, I had another borderline experience where something possibly unexplained from the Western liberal educational paradigm reminded me. Being a living well of suppressed information, months ago I told a neighbor who had an ailing spouse a practical idea that could easily help that person who to the spouse was progressing to his demise. Today, I see this person again, and was thanked profusely for advice that led to a seemingly miraculous recovery. In one frame of thinking, I considered coincidence. Then I realized I gave this spouse info to help her husband because I believed the information might change his course, and I really didn't like how he was suffering, even though I knew so little of his character and his life. I just knew it was evident that his spouse loved him, and we wanted to turn his problem around. Something happened, and this guy is much better. Now, the beautiful thing is, there actually was some Western scientific foundation to my recommendation, which was bridged by logical unbiased thinking to this person's problem. A lot of the info that is suppressed is logical. The information remains suppressed and is promised to be even more suppressed by the Western liberal educational paradigm right now called the establishment. This headline is the promise, the general progression previously described. I was noticed of the plan on the day I received this great testimony. Communication of ideas between people is the basis of what leads to advancement or destruction in this realm. The highest ranked conveyor of ideas wirelessly in this age, Google, is taking a stronger stance towards controlling what ideas people can know. One of the most powerful ninjutsu from Naruto lore is Shishui's special ocular power, the Kotoe Matsukami. It's an ability that allows its users to insert false beliefs into the victim in such a manner the victim thinks they are his or her own ideas, derived from his or her own logical deduction. When a company has control of the largest dictionary of the world and chooses to delete empowering information under the guise of protecting public welfare, future generations will use the dictionary believing that they have full basis for making logical decisions. However, they are unwittingly duped as elimination of true narratives and the amplification of false narratives creates a false basis of understanding the victim assumes is the most correct logical foundation for making any decision. Completely unrestricted communication can be offensive. It can collapse industry that is not able to adapt quickly. It may disrupt monopolies in power as various common people become empowered. So, we now have this tug of war, the basis of the concept of the status quo versus enterprise. Communication provided with the intent to aid the lot of another individual, and specifically to spark a philosophic journey in the other party where they reflect on their actions and lessons learned, appears to be the actual meaning of life. Inherent in this key idea is a concept of life as a journey. You choose a vocation to aid the lot of your fellow man in a way that reflects the existential issue that concerns you the most. To me, this issue appears to be the limitation of life and wellness itself. Events have continued to unfold in my life that can be stringed into a lengthy narrative that emphasizes the similar existential theme over and over. I will save you my origin story, but will mention that I've been gifted to survive in a life which statistically shouldn't be. I continue to devise ways to make positive impacts on the world, weighed by the perspectives of life's seeming brevity, the degradement of time, and the battle to reconcile the unestablished possibilities of longevity. This in counterposition to cultural nihilism all around me. From this theory on selfish communication and the meaning of life, a subpoint is that isolation is antithetical to the meaning of life. This runs counter to the idealization of the monk way, meditating in the mountains as the most enlightened type of person. With isolation, you cannot participate in sharing ideas with anyone. Constant pursuit of wise counsel, refinement of beliefs, and questioning one's motivations is the consequence of application of life's meaning. It is that dialectical process that creates a sense of journey or personal growth for the individual. Within the process, you can insert the hero's journey. With the Western liberal educational paradigm, you are left with a paradox. The process of self-interest, other interest, logical thinking planning leads to the creation of enormous organizations of people symbolized with names. These organizations operate from Western liberal educational Darwinian perspective of survival of the fittest. They take all actions to ensure their future hegemony, and in the process limit mankind from achieving what it is capable of more quickly. This is presumably out of fear of temporal fortunes lost with new competition, but somehow with the seemingly inexplicable elements of ritualistic abuse. Stupid reversals of previous advancements in the media, see the millennial whoop and loss over standardized quality of today's pop music, and various nihilist propositions with the stated purpose of protecting the earth and preserving resources, all seemingly to further control and limit the spread of new ideas. Simply stated, people do good, a powerful entity is created, the entity negates its benefit by committing evil to preserve the interests of those highest societal position. The leaders of the entity even use ritual to determine the qualification of unscrupulous prospects, going as far as to wear a mantle of imagery and symbol classified as dark to demoralize the public they originally served and, of course, to gloat. Or there is some supernatural power in use of dark symbols, possibly including contract forcing their display. This would be a form of notice and consent. You will either mostly understand what I've told you so far, or it will just zip on by. But if you have the eyes to see, you may understand my concern that this tug of war between the dichotomies looks to have some dramatic developments over the next few years. The continued consolidation of power will lead to a stereotypical dystopian future, or adequate resistance will stalemate, or resistance will start to topple the impending doom. Which reality we head to is either pre-planned supernaturally, is mathematically occurred, assuming a purely mechanical universe, or is completely open with the possibility to divert human civilization to an actual utopia purely dependent upon the notion that there are enough individuals to carry out the theorized meaning of life. This is my first stated theory on the meaning of life. I suspect that it may change over time. With that, I say thanks for watching. If you like this commentary, please be sure to share this video, like, and subscribe. Thanks.